Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'll be showing you how to make this beautiful dress. It's a gathered shirt dress with front lace design and it has a drawstring puff sleeve. If this is something you'd like to know more about, keep on watching and let's get started. I'll start by drafting the upper part of the dress. So I have my lines here already. I have the shoulder line, the chest line, and the waist line. I placed half of the shoulder measurements on the shoulder line and on the chest line. Then I connected it into a straight line. Then I placed my neck width, which is 3.5 inches. And the neck depth is 3.5 as well. Then I connected the point with a curve. The next thing I did was to come down by 1 inch from the shoulder line and I connected it to the neck width to form the shoulder slope. Then I got the midpoint of what I have there and I came in by 0.5 inch. And I connected the point with my curve to form my armhole. The next thing I did was to place quarter of my bust circumference on the chest line and I added half inch for ease. Then I added 1 inch for my side seam allowance. And on the waistline, I placed quarter of the waist circumference. I added half inch for ease. Then I added 1 inch side seam allowance. Then I connected my points together. I'll be using the same pattern to cut both front and back. So the next thing I'll do now is to place my back neck depth on the pattern paper. So my back neck depth is 1 inch. So I'm going to place 1 inch like so. Then I'll connect the points with my curve. So that will be all. What I'll do now is to cut out. So I'm going to cut out now. I'll be cutting out the back neckline first. I'll go ahead to use my pattern to cut out my back piece. So I'm going to place my fabric on fold. I'm going to pin my pattern paper on the fabric. Then I'm going to cut out. I'll make sure to add half inch allowance to the waistline to join to the down parts. Then I'll also add half inch allowance round the armhole, the shoulder line, and the neckline. Then I'm going to set aside the back piece and I'll work on the front pattern. I'll be making a little alteration on the front pattern. If you watch the video closely, you will see that the front pattern is not entirely the lace material. There is a little cutout at the side that was replaced with the Ankara fabric. So I'll go ahead to do that on my pattern paper. This is optional. You can choose to make your entire front pattern to be the lace material. It's totally fine. So what I did was to come in by 6 inches from the center front. I placed my tape on the center front like so. Then I marked 6 inches. This totally depends on you. You can choose to come in as much as you want. So what I'm going to do now is to connect that point to the mid point on my armhole. So I'm going to connect that like so. And that will be all. So I'm just going to label this as the lace part and this as the fabric. Then I'm going to cut out. So when I'm about to cut on fabric, I'm going to be adding half inch allowance to both the fabric side and the lace side to join them back. Then I'll cut the front neckline as well. Then I'll go ahead to cut out on the fabric. Now to cut out, I place the lace on fold. Then I'm going to pin down my pattern paper to the fabric. I'll make sure I have half inch allowance before the pattern. That will serve as an allowance to join my bottom placket later. So I'm going to pin that down to the fabric. Then I'm going to cut out. I added half inch allowance round the pattern. I also went ahead to cut the other part of the front piece and I added half inch allowance round the pattern aside the side seam allowance. I have that on my pattern already. So I'm going to set this aside and I'll cut out the down part. So I went ahead to cut out my gathered part. The width of the fabric I have here is my waist circumference multiplied by 3. So my waist circumference is 37 and I multiplied that by 3. So I have about 111 here. To get the length of my gathers, what I did was to deduct my half length from the entire length of my dress. So the length of my dress is 40 inches and the half length is 16. So I deducted 16 inches from 40 inches. So I have 24 inches left. So the length of my gathers will be 24 inches. So from the top of my fabric, I marked 24 inches. Then I added 1.5 inches to that. That will serve as an allowance to join to the upper part and to hem the down part of my gathers. So I went ahead to roll that out and I cut out. I'll be adding pockets to my dress, so I'll have to split this into 2 equal halves. So I folded it into 2. So I'm going to split that into 2, like so. So I'm going to set aside one of the piece that will be serving as the back. Then I'm going to fold the other piece into 2 equal halves. And I'm going to split that also. I'll be having 2 separate pieces for the front also. So I'm going to set that aside and I'll start joining my pieces together. I'll go ahead and join the front piece now. I'm going to join the Ankara to the lace right side. I'm going to place it right side facing each other. And I'll stitch with half-inch allowance. This is what I have after stitching that up. The next thing I'm going to do now is to go ahead and join my gathers to the upper bodice. So I'm going to take my fabric and I'll run my gather stitch on it. After which I'm going to join it to the upper bodice with half-inch allowance. So this is what I have after joining my gathers to the upper bodice. As you can see, I did the same thing to the other side also. I went ahead to join my gathers. I've done that to the back piece also. Now I'm going to set this aside and I'll work on the button placket. So I went ahead to cut a long strip of fabric for my button plackets. As you can see, I cut out for the Ankara for both sides. The width is 3 inches each and the length is as long as the Ankara piece. I also did the same thing to the lace part also. I cut out my strip of fabric that the width is 3 inches. And I added interfacing to the wrong side to give it structure. Then I placed the Ankara piece on the lace piece, right side facing each other. And I'll stitch with half-inch allowance. Now this is what I have after joining the lace parts to the Ankara parts. Then I went ahead to fold in my button placket. So what I did was to fold in half-inch first. Then I further fold it again with 1 inch. Then I iron that down. So I'm left with half-inch that is not folded in. I folded in half-inch first, then 1 inch. Now I'll go ahead to stitch that down to my dress. Now I'll take my button placket and I'll place it right side facing wrong side of my dress. The part that was not folded in, I'm going to place it like so. And I'll stitch with half-inch. I'll make sure I match them up at the waistline. I'll match up the lace parts to the lace part of my dress. I'm going to use my pins to hold that down. I'll match it up. Then I'll go ahead and stitch that up with half-inch. Now this is what I have after stitching that up. The next thing I'll do is to flip this to the right side. Then I'll fold my placket. I'll fold it to the right side like so. I'll use that to cover the rough edges like you see me doing. Then I'll stitch that up. I'm going to make a top stitch on that point. I'm going to stitch it down like that. Now this is what I have after stitching down my plackets. You can see how neat everything is looking like. I'm going to give this a good press. Then I'll cut off the excess I have on my plackets. Then the next thing I'll do now is to attach my pockets. I forgot to make a video while I was cutting my pockets, but I believe we all know how to cut the pockets now. And I have videos where I showed how to cut my pockets on my channel. So you can just search through, you're going to see it. So I'm going to stitch my pockets 2 inches below the waistline. So what I did was to come down 2 inches below my waistline. So I placed my pocket there and I will stitch it down. After fixing the pockets, the next thing I'll do now is to join both front and back at the shoulders. So I place them right side facing each other. Then I'll stitch with 1/2 inch allowance. After which I'm going to stitch my side seam also. So I'm going to stitch that up with 1 inch allowance. I'll come in at the pocket side. I'll stitch the pocket with 1/2 inch. After which I'm going to stitch that down with 1 inch allowance. I'll do that to the other side also. I'll stitch up my sides. Then I'm going to hem the down part of my dress also 1/2 inch twice. The next thing I'm going to do now is to work on the collar of the dress. So what I did was to place the neckline on fold. So I placed it on fold and I'll measure round what I have on the neckline. I'm going to measure that round. So when I did that, I have 10.5 inches. So the width of my neckline on fold is 10.5 inches. Now I'll get my pattern paper and I'll fold that into 2. Now from the folded edge here, I'm going to measure and mark 10.5 inches. Then I'm going to rule a straight line across. Now from the center fold, I'm going to mark the midpoint of my collar. So I divided the 10.5 into 2 and the midpoint is 5.25. So I marked 5.25 inches there. Then on the line there, I came up by 1/2 inch. Now with a slight curve, I'm going to connect the center point to meet the 1/2 inch. Now from the down part, I'm going to measure my collar stand, which is 1 inch. So what I did was to mark 1 inch upward from the down part. I followed that curve and I marked 1 inch. Then I'm going to connect my points together. So that is it for my collar stand. Now on the upper part of the collar stand, I'll come in from that line. I'll come in by 1 inch. Then I'll connect it to the down part with a slight curve. I'm making a 1-piece collar for this dress. If you are making a 2-piece collar, you have to cut out the collar stand first before drafting out the main collar. For a 1-piece collar, I have to draft out the main collar on this. So I want the width of my collar to be 2.5 inches. So from the line I have there, what I did was to mark 2.5 inches. I followed that line and I marked 2.5 inches all the way down. Then I connected that with my ruler. Then I'm going to connect that point to the collar stand. Then from the folded edge here, I came down by 1/2 inch from the collar. Then I'll connect that point to the middle of my collar so that the collar can relax perfectly on the neckline. So that is it for my cut together collar. Now I'll go ahead and cut this out. This is what it looks like after cutting out. Now I'll use this pattern paper to cut out my interfacing. I placed my paper stay on fold and I placed my pattern paper on it. I went ahead to cut that out. Then I'm going to set that aside and I will use that to cut out on fabric. I went ahead to place my fabric into 4. I'll be cutting for both lining and fabric at once. Then I placed the pattern paper on it. I pinned that down to the fabric and I made sure I have enough allowance round the collar. So I added 1/2 inch allowance round my collar. Aside the center back that is on fold, I added 1/2 inch allowance round my collar. This is what I have after cutting out. What I'm going to do next is to add my interfacing to the wrong side of my collar, making sure I leave out the 1/2 inch allowance all around the collar. This is it after ironing the interfacing to it. Then I also went ahead to fold in the down part of my collar. I folded it in with 1/2 inch, just one side of it. Now from this side, I'm going to stitch up my collar, right side facing each other, like so, with 1/2 inch allowance, and I'll stop at the other side. So I'll be left with the part that is going to go round the neckline. This is what I have after stitching up the collar. Next thing I'll do now is to make notches all around so that when I turn it to the right side, everything can stay nice and flat. Then I'll turn it to the right side. And I made sure to use my scissors to bring out all the edges. So I'll go ahead and give that a good press. So this is what I have after pressing. You can see everything is looking all nice and flat. Then I went ahead to fold this over into 2. I want to get the midpoint of my collar. So I folded this into 2 and I notched the midpoint. So I'm going to bring in my dress also. And I'm going to notch the midpoint of my neckline as well. So I placed it over and I notched the midpoint of my dress also. Now I'm going to place my collar on the neckline. I'm going to mark them at the midpoint. I placed one side of the collar, right side facing wrong side of my dress. And I pinned that down round the neckline. Then I'll go ahead and stitch that round my neckline. I'll stitch my collar to my neckline with my 1/2 inch allowance. Now this is it after stitching up. Now I'm going to turn it to the right side. And I'll use the other part of the collar to cover up the rough edges like this. I'm going to cover up the rough edges with the other part of the collar. And I'm going to make a top stitch on it. This is what I have after fixing my collar. So the next thing I'm going to do is to fix my buttons and the buttonhole. The buttonholes will be on the right side of the shirt, while the buttons will be on the left side of the shirt. Then you add the sleeve of your choice. My next video will be on how to cut and sew a drawstring sleeve, so you should watch out for that. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this video has been helpful to you. Please do not forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel, and also put on your notification bell so you'll be notified each time I upload a new video. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.